Hello and welcome to Dining with Death. This episode is on my playlist, Deadly Destinations, where we visit the site of terrible events. Sometimes they're murders and sometimes they're mass murders. Today I'm coming to you from the Capitol Hill area of Seattle, Washington, where in 2006 a man committed an unthinkable act. I'm Stacy Lee. Let's begin.
Seattle. It's one of my favorite cities. It's got such great and important American history and holds a unique place in the story of how this country was formed in its early days. The people are unique and individualist, and what I love most about them is that they not only do their own thing, they let everyone else do their own thing. It's a gorgeous city with breathtaking views overlooking the Sound. It's a really great mixture of nature and industrialism. It's lush and green and organic, but it's also gloomy and grungy and dark. Seattle is a mood. It's a vibe. There is nowhere like it in the world. In the heart of downtown Seattle, just above bustling Pike Place Market, sits the area known as Capitol Hill. It is probably Seattle's hippest neighborhood, acting as the epicenter for bars, brunch spots, and boutiques. It's a very inclusive and diverse area where many businesses are owned and operated by members of the LGBTQ community and by people of color. Some of Seattle's wealthiest residents live in this area, and on 14th Avenue is a place called Millionaire's Row. The apartment buildings here are luxurious and expensive, some of them built by famous designer and contractor Fred Anhalt. The views from some of these apartments is spectacular, overlooking the water and the city. The area is overflowing with culture. There are many clubs and music venues, and what I like about this area is that you can find all kinds of music: grunge, folk, pop, salsa, electronic, hip-hop, R&B. There's something for everyone here, and I love that. Of course, this is the birthplace of grunge, the music that will forever define Seattle. The epicenter of the birthplace of the grunge genre is Central Saloon, which is said to be haunted by ghosts of musicians and patrons of the past. I covered Central Saloon on my playlist Dining with the Deceased, if you're interested in watching that. Central Saloon is a fantastic place with unbelievably cool history. The Capitol Hill area is home to the city's most famous movie theater, the Harvard Exit, which sadly closed, and the Egyptian Theater, which is a former Masonic lodge. It's a gorgeous single-screen theater with lots of great history. The architecture in this area is fantastic. It reminds me a lot of San Francisco. It's ornate and stately and absolutely beautiful. Residences sit right next to and often above businesses, and it's a busy area with lots of activity, people coming and going. We drove up to this area from our downtown hotel, the Pali Hotel, which I just have to mention because it's such a fantastic place. If you're ever looking to stay right next to Pike Place Market, this is your spot. The rooms are in this ancient building, early 1900s, and it was once the Colonnade Hotel. It's now on the National Registry of Historic Buildings. This hotel, I could live here. It's in my top 10 hotel experiences. Capitol Hill is just a short drive from the Pike Place Market area, and there's a lot to see on that drive. The downtown area is more corporate in look and in feel. There are major brand chain stores and lots of steel and glass high-rises, but as you climb towards Capitol Hill, you notice an almost immediate change. The massive skyscrapers disappear and are replaced by little old row houses and townhomes that have become businesses, at least on the ground floor. The new structures are intermingled with very old ones. There are lots of murals and artistic signs and brightly painted buildings. I quickly started to notice that the telephone poles were oddly shaped, and as we got closer, I saw that it's because they are covered in layers and layers and layers of posters. There are so many posters that they've actually added feet to the diameter of the poles. I didn't want to disturb anyone's advertising, but I really wanted to pull a stack of these off and see how old the ones at the bottom are, if you could still read them. I don't know if you could, but I found this really interesting and quirky and very, very Seattle. The Capitol Hill area is named that because it does sit on a hill, and you can see just how steep the incline is from our vantage point as we return to our hotel near Pike Place. After you pass through the bohemian-feeling commercial area that is full of coffee shops and boutiques and clothing shops, the area gets more residential. There are schools and medical offices and lots of little old houses and townhomes with newer apartment buildings sprinkled throughout. It's a nice, peaceful area that seems very homey and very comfortable. And as we drive, we have now arrived at the heart of our deadly destination. This is a story about a deranged man who thought his ideas and his views were right and everyone else's were wrong. He thought if he couldn't force people to live the way he wanted them to live, they deserved to die. He was socially awkward and angry that women rejected him, and he blamed others for his own feelings. He had a huge ego but massive insecurities and an overinflated sense of importance, and although he said very little, he was screaming on the inside. On March 24, 2006, an event called Better Off Undead was held right here at the Capitol Hill Arts Center, a place commonly called Shack, which was a performing arts center that often served as a venue for the rave community. This is what it looked like back then, and this is what it looks like now. It's a small, unassuming building that sits on a side street in the commercial area of Capitol Hill. The Better Off Dead event was a zombie-themed rave. There were about 350 people who attended, many dressed as zombies, and by all accounts, it was a great night. There was plenty of security and no reported problems, and everybody had a great time. When the event was over, a group decided to take the party home to this house right here on East Republican Street. As you can see, this is a little old home with a classic porch covered in trees. It's a very typical American house, and beyond that, a very Seattle house. Even today, this old VW van sits out front, very much giving hippie flophouse vibes. The scene here, especially the rave scene, is very open. People experiment with drugs, and they spend hours sitting around talking about philosophy and music and sexuality. And from my experience, most people in this scene try to make others feel welcome and comfortable. It's a very free and open-minded scene, and yes, it might be one that if you're super uptight, sexually repressed, it would make you uncomfortable. The people in this scene like to try a lot of different things and different people, and they're very into experiencing all the elements that this lifestyle has to offer. The Better Off Undead after party was in full swing here at the house. Most of the people who were there knew each other, but there was someone new there. This is Kyle Aaron Huff. He was a quiet guy by all accounts, very respectful and polite, but he was far from what he appeared to be on the outside. Kyle was wrestling with demons that no one else knew about until it was far too late for anyone to help him. Kyle was from Whitefish, Montana, which is a tiny little town in a very conservative area. Tourists flock to the area year-round to enjoy skiing in the winter and the nature in the summer. The food scene here is also very hot. Ski Magazine usually ranks Whitefish in its top 10 ski destinations in the country, and the culinary scene is just as good as the skiing. But for the people who live there, who are from there, it's about hiking and hunting and living near the land, and it's very much old school America. Kyle Huff has a twin. His twin brother is named Kane. Kyle was known as someone who was friendly but withdrawn. In their 1996 yearbook, Kane and Kyle were given the award Least School Spirited. They weren't into the whole high school scene, but they were liked by the people who knew them. They were nice enough. One night in 2000, Kyle got drunk and shot at this statue of a moose in downtown Whitefish, and he caused a lot of damage to it. Now, he obviously had a conscience, because a year later he wrote this letter to the creator of the statue. In it, he apologizes profusely, and the letter seems very genuine. He was remorseful. You get the impression that he was a very, very sensitive person who, despite his big ego, had a lot of insecurities, but a sweet side as well. People describe him as gentle and humorous and smart. I found many accounts of people who described him using the word harmless, which is ironic. Kyle Huff was a complicated guy, no doubt. In 2002, Jared Hope, a high school friend of Kyle's, came home to Whitefish from Missoula, where he had been living, and shot and killed his parents and then himself. This event, this act committed by a classmate, seemed to bury itself deep, deep into Kyle Huff's brain in the worst way possible. Kyle and his twin brother moved to Seattle not long after that event. It seems like a really big move for two boys from a tiny mountain town, but the Huff twins were really into music. They had talked about moving to Seattle to be close to the music scene for years, and finally they followed their dream and made the move. Kyle Huff and his brother Kane lived here in the Town and Country Apartments in the 12300 block of Roosevelt Way, Northeast, near Northgate. Jim Pickett, the manager of the complex, described both of the Huff brothers as very respectful. When they got to Seattle, Kane enrolled in community college and was doing really well. Kyle Huff was floundering. His life was a mess. He got fired from pretty much every job he ever had. He failed miserably with women. He was very awkward, and he never knew the right thing to say. He made women uncomfortable. They didn't like him. It's also worth mentioning that the Huff twins are around 6'5". They are very, very big guys. Apparently, Kyle's size, combined with his awkwardness, made women feel ill at ease. Kyle spent his days in front of the TV, smoking pot, and at night he delivered pizzas for a little bit of money. Someone that worked with Kyle delivering pizzas back then said, Kyle was soft-spoken but very, very stubborn. He wanted to do things his way, and he wanted other people to do things his way. Kyle and Kane spent a lot of time bar hopping and going to clubs in the evenings and on the weekends. Kyle attended the Better Off Undead event, and while there, he got talking with some people on the rave scene. One of them invited Kyle back to the little house on East Republican Way for the after party. This invitation would prove deadly. People who attended the party barely noticed Kyle Huff. He was dressed in dark clothes that he always wore. He kind of skulked around in the corners, and several times he tried to talk to girls, but he was so bad at it. He just didn't fit into this scene of open sexuality and experimentation, and that's okay. Not all of us fit in everywhere, but Kyle was angry about it. He was judgmental. He was disgusted. It is very clear and obvious that he wanted sex desperately, but he couldn't get it, and he hated those who were having it so freely with everyone but him. Something had been building inside Kyle Huff for a long time, and for reasons known only to him, he decided he had reached the end of his rope. Around 7 a.m., after a night of partying, Kyle Huff left the house. He walked across the street to his large truck, which was parked nearby. From it, he retrieved a 12-gauge pistol-grip shotgun and a 40-caliber semi-automatic handgun, along with 7 bandoliers holding over 300 rounds of ammunition. He walked back towards the house, and as he neared the home, he pulled from his jacket a can of pink spray paint. He bent over and painted the word "now" on one of the steps of a neighboring home, and then again on the sidewalk. No one will ever fully know what that means, but it meant something to Kyle. He walked up the path to the porch where people were gathered, talking and smoking. He shot every single one of them. People inside the home ran to barricade the front door as they realized what was happening, but they were too late. Kyle Huff forced his way inside the home and shot the 2 people who were in the entryway. He then said, "There's plenty for everyone." People ran as he walked up the steps to the home to the 2nd floor, where he heard people barricaded in the bathroom. He shot through the bathroom door as 2 people hid inside, and luckily neither of them were hit. He continued shooting and hit an 8th person who was wounded. A police officer was patrolling nearby, Officer Steve Leonard. He heard the shots and headed towards the house. By that time, there were multiple calls coming into 911, and the callers gave the address to the house. The dispatcher then relayed the address to Officer Leonard, and he proceeded to the shooting. As he pulled up to the house, a wounded shooting victim came running from inside. Officer Leonard stepped in front of the victim to shield him because he saw, coming down the outside steps, Kyle Huff carrying his weapons. As Officer Leonard began to yell to Kyle Huff, "Drop your weapons," Kyle Huff placed his pistol in his mouth and pulled the trigger. The shooting lasted less than 4 minutes. 6 people had been murdered, another 2 were injured, and Kyle Huff was dead. Police rushed to the scene and began attending to the victims. In Kyle Huff's truck, police found another rifle, another handgun, several more boxes of ammunition, a baseball bat, and a machete. The weapons fetish with these guys, I'm telling you, we see it all the time. A search warrant was quickly drafted and signed, and police went to Kyle and Kane Huff's apartment. And inside they found more guns and ammunition, and they found this note. Kyle had written a letter to his brother Kane. In it, Kyle tells his brother, "I can't let them get away with what they're doing. Kids like me and you are seriously dying over this shit. I hate this world of sex that they are striving to make. This is a revolution, brother, the most important thing to happen since man began." Very, very delusional thinking from a very delusional man. He then goes on to talk about how he feels sexually inadequate. He doesn't use those words, but yes, it's a very disturbing letter. The city of Seattle was shocked. The country was shocked. How did a house party turn into a massacre? What led to this? Why did this happen? There were no answers then, and there aren't any answers now. This was senseless. People gathered outside the house and made memorials. They gathered in the Capitol Hill area and held candlelight vigils led by area clergy. They held each other and they mourned and they asked why. The Capitol Hill Arts Area Center, SHAC, never really recovered from being tied to this terrible event, and it closed after the shooting. Friends wrote tributes to those they had lost, and others were angry at the guns and the violence and the needless loss of life. They were angry at Kyle Huff, this incredibly disturbed maniac who felt he had the right to take what no one has the right to take, simply because he was failing at life and wanted to blame others for his failures and take his rage out on innocent people. Investigators looked into Kyle Huff's life. His friends told the press about him, but there were never any real answers, and there never will be. This was just an absolutely evil and vile act by an angry and sad man who had no right to do what he did. There's a lot about this event online, but one thing I do want to point out is the movie. Seattle local director and screenwriter Jagger Gravning was affected deeply by this shooting, and he wrote and produced Wallflower, a movie that premiered at the 2017 Seattle International Film Festival. It portrays some fictional aspects, but many real elements of this shooting on film. I watched it as part of my research for this episode, and this is one I definitely recommend. It's a well-done little film. It's obviously low budget, but it's well shot and well acted, has lots of heart, and definitely gives you an insight into Kyle Aaron Huff and what happened on this terrible day. It's on Tubi for free if you would like to watch it. My heart goes out to all of those that were affected by these acts and by this event. I hope the people who suffered on that day and have suffered since are healing in the best way they can. Now, as we always do on this playlist, we explore the culinary scene in our deadly destination. This is Dining with Death. We had lots and lots of places to choose from in this great neighborhood. We decided on this spot, Elysian Brewery, located in the heart of the area. This is a 220-seat beer hall that serves classic pub food and lots of great beers. I love the industrial chic vibe of this place, part warehouse, part pub. It's spacious and bright, and the atmosphere is really comfortable. You can tell this is a popular place for area locals. There's a lot of evidence of local businesses promoting themselves here, and I love that. You know I had to leave a little Dining with Death love on the sticker wall. We ordered a couple of beers, a hef and an ale, and they were both really, really good. Great beer. We started with the house-made pretzels, nothing better than pretzels with beer, and these were outstanding, crispy and tender and delicious. We tried the tomato grilled cheese and the tomato soup, and both were really good. Look at that cheese pull. The sandwich was crunchy and savory, and the soup was tangy and garlicky. Everything was really good. This is a great place in a fantastic neighborhood in one of the greatest cities in the world. Unfortunately, it is also a deadly destination, the place where people lost their lives because one man decided to commit a terrible act on a gloomy Seattle morning.
Thank you for joining me today on Dining with Death, Deadly Destinations. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It helps me out a lot. Stay safe and be kind to each other, and I'll see you next time on Dining with Death. Bye.